If you think about failure as something that deviates from the outcomes that we expected, then we experience failure every day. Like the outfit that we planned in our head just did not live up to expectation. The lamb that we seasoned so well ended up being a bit too chewy. The project that we've been overseeing has not met the deadline and is also over budget. Although not what we wanted, these are fine. We can handle these. But then there are some failures that really threaten our identity.
But amid all of that, the biggest thing I was battling was, yes, the loss, but also the impact to my identity. Because I spent
Yeah.
my whole life on this trajectory
Preparing.
of being a designer, right? And here is
Yes.
my big opportunity to finally be all that I am supposed
Mm-hmm.
to. And it is the biggest flop I have ever had in my entire life. You have this big COVID thing happening, and you don't know jack from scratch, what's up, what's down, or what will be.
Yeah.
Sure, you can guess what will be when we come out of it, but you have no idea. And on top of that, you're managing your life and the chaos and all of that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I am all up in arms with
Yes.
nowhere to go in fashion, and I'm like, and I'm now suffering with bad low self-esteem. Because if I am not a designer,
Now what are you?
what was the point of all those
Mm,
40 years of my life, right? Like what?
yeah.
And so the good thing, I reaped a few things, and I continue to reap a wealth of things from it. But I would say one of the things, the first thing I reaped from it was I knew I had to rehabilitate my identity. But at heart of it, my identity was wrapped around that designer a
Yeah.
lot more than I was aware of. And so I had to go through the process of learning who I was without that tag, because it's not what we are not human. Sorry, excuse me. We're not human doings. We're human beings.
Yeah.
So at the core of it, it is who we are. And design is something you do. It's
Yeah.
not something you are.
A failure that threatens our identity might just possibly be the worst kind of failure to experience because the questions that it brings up are so intense. Like, does this mean that I am not good at this thing? Or if I don't have this, then who am I? Or even, am I worthy to be in this room, on this stage, in this place? But Shawna chose such a brilliant way of recovering from the threat that this failure played on her identity. She chose what researcher Patrick Leary called an identity restructuring response. Identity restructuring occurs when we change some part of our identity in response to the threat that we've experienced. She identified 3 ways in which people tend to restructure their identity. The first one was changing the importance of the identity. The second one is changing the meaning of the identity. And the third one is abandoning the identity altogether. Shawna intentionally changed the importance of what the designer identity meant to her. She reframed designer in her mind as something she did rather than who she was. And this allowed her to not only maintain design as a healthy part of her world, but also to reduce the severity of the distress that she was experiencing. Changing the importance of an identity means leaning more into our values than our roles. Adam Grant has a quote that goes, "Your work does not define your worth. A career is what you do. It doesn't have to reflect who you are." Making a job a part of your identity is an option, not an obligation. Your impact in the world doesn't depend on how you make a living. It derives from how you live your values. When we focus on whether we are living according to our values, it helps us to realize if and how we might be overemphasizing a particular identity in our lives and might even reveal that we might not really be living as fully into our values as we should. Therefore, potentially creating a space for us to identify how we can live out a particular value even more. If you think that you could benefit from reviewing your values, I've suggested an exercise that you can try in the description. Now, another tool that we can try to help us to recover from identity threatening failures is to broaden our view. When we experience a failure, they tend to be magnified because of recency bias, which magnifies the importance of recent events over less recent ones. But when we broaden our view to encompass the last 6 months, the last year, the last 2 or 3 years, the picture often looks different, and the current failure that we experience becomes much smaller in light of the growth that we've made. And again, how about you? Have you ever experienced an identity threatening failure? I would love to hear what you did that was helpful in the situation. Well, that is it for now on identity and fear. Until next time.